The wind never stops in the West Mesa. It sweeps across the arid land on the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico, carrying dust, whispers, and unbeknownst to anyone for years, the silence of the dead. In the early 2000s, the city of Albuquerque was expanding. New housing developments crept toward the desert, roads were carved into untouched terrain, and empty lots waited to become the next suburban dream. But the West Mesa, dry, cracked, and largely ignored, seemed to resist civilization. It was too barren. Too far. Too forgotten. Until one afternoon in February 2009. A woman was walking her dog near a newly developed neighborhood, not far from 118th Street. Her dog began pawing at something in the loose dirt. At first, she thought it was just a bone, maybe from an animal. But when she looked closer, the truth was chilling. It wasn't an animal bone. It was human. Police were called. The site was cordoned off. Forensics teams arrived with shovels, bags, and cameras. No one could have imagined what lay beneath that dry, cracked earth. One bone turned into two. Then three. Then entire skeletons, one after the other, shallowly buried, carefully spaced. What had started as a quiet dog walk quickly escalated into one of the largest crime scenes in New Mexico history. Over the next few weeks, investigators uncovered the skeletal remains of 11 women and one unborn child. The bodies had been buried years earlier, likely between 2003 and 2005. The desert had kept its secret well. News reports started calling the area the West Mesa Graveyard. Who were these women? How did they end up here? And more terrifyingly, who had put them here? The scene was too calculated to be random. These weren't accidental deaths or forgotten remains. Each woman had been deliberately buried, spaced apart with intention, as if someone had taken their time. But as forensic teams worked and the headlines spread, one truth began to settle uncomfortably over the city: the killer was still unknown. The case shocked Albuquerque. Not just because of the number of bodies, but because of how long they had remained hidden, in plain sight. The wind had blown over their graves for years. Houses had been built nearby. Kids had played within shouting distance. No one had ever suspected what lay just beneath the surface. By the time the last body was unearthed, a nickname had already surfaced: the West Mesa Bone Collector. A ghostly figure. No face. No trace. Only bones left behind like trophies. And so began one of America's most chilling modern mysteries. Because sometimes, the desert doesn't bury secrets deep enough. They weren't just bones. They were daughters. Sisters. Friends. Women with names, lives, and stories. But for years, those stories were ignored, dismissed by a system that didn't listen closely enough. Of the 11 women found buried in the West Mesa, most had disappeared between 2003 and 2005. Their names weren't front-page headlines when they went missing. They didn't spark national manhunts or round-the-clock media coverage. Most of them were last seen in Albuquerque's rougher neighborhoods, places known for drugs, poverty, and sex work. For many, it started with hard circumstances. Some battled addiction. Others were trying to escape abusive homes. Some were mothers themselves. All of them were human, but society often didn't treat them that way. Michelle Valdez was just 22 when she vanished in 2004. She was pregnant when she was killed, her unborn child buried beside her. Her mother spent years plastering her photo across town, chasing leads that went nowhere. Jamie Barella, only 15 years old, went missing with her 27-year-old cousin Evelyn Salazar. The two were last seen heading to a park, either ever returned. Both were found in the Mesa graveyard. Victoria Chavez, Veronica Romero, Monica Candelaria, the names kept coming. Each victim had vanished under eerily similar circumstances, last seen in parts of the city known for sex work. Each one disappeared without a trace, and each one was found in that same stretch of desert, years later. Families reported them missing. They made calls, filed reports, handed out flyers. Some even begged the media to care. But again and again, they were met with silence or indifference. Police categorized many cases as runaways or high-risk lifestyles, and the urgency vanished. It wasn't until the remains were discovered that the city began to pay attention. 11 women, all found within 100 yards of each other. The pattern couldn't be ignored anymore. The realization was sickening. Someone had been hunting them. Someone had preyed on the vulnerable, knowing that few would notice if they disappeared. Someone had used the desert as a dumping ground, assuming the wind and sand would keep their secret forever. And for years, it did. Even more disturbing was the possibility that there could be other victims, women who were never reported missing. Or bodies buried deeper, in places no one had thought to look. What linked them all wasn't just how they died, but how they had lived. On the margins. In the shadows. Forgotten. Their graves told one story. But their lives told another, one of neglect, injustice, and pain. And as the case grew colder, one haunting thought began to circulate. Was this the work of one man, or many? The discovery of 11 bodies in the West Mesa was horrifying. But what made the case even more chilling was the total absence of a killer. No eyewitnesses. No confessions. No fingerprints. No DNA. Just a nickname whispered across Albuquerque, the West Mesa Bone Collector, and a growing list of unanswered questions. The Albuquerque Police Department formed a special task force to investigate the killings. Dozens of officers combed through thousands of pages of missing person reports, phone records, and sex offender registries. FBI profilers were brought in. Aerial photos of the desert from years past were analyzed to pinpoint when the ground had been disturbed. The effort was massive. But frustratingly, it led nowhere. No one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. Whoever did this had taken their time, and vanished just as carefully. Still, one name kept coming up: Lorenzo Montoya. Montoya lived less than 3 miles from the burial site. He had a history of violence toward women, especially sex workers. In 2006, 3 years before the bones were found, police had responded to a 911 call at his trailer. They found the body of a young woman he had strangled. Montoya was shot dead at the scene by the woman's boyfriend, who had arrived to confront him. After Montoya's death, the killings seemed to stop. No new victims matching the profile went missing. Could that have been a coincidence? Or was the bone collector already dead? There were other suspects, too. A man who ran a nearby landscaping business was briefly investigated. Rumors of a police officer involved in trafficking surfaced. Some theories pointed to a possible sex trafficking ring, using women and then disposing of them when they became liabilities. One of the more terrifying ideas? There may have been more than one person involved. What if someone supplied the victims, and someone else buried them? What if the killer wasn't a shadowy stranger, but someone the women knew, someone who blended into the neighborhood, into daily life? Despite years of investigation, no one was ever charged. Leads dried up. The tip lines stopped ringing. The case grew cold. In 2016, authorities publicly stated they believed the killer had likely died or moved away. It was a quiet admission that justice might never come. But the mystery still haunts Albuquerque. Because someone took 11 women, buried them with care and calculation, and disappeared. And the scariest part? He could still be out there. Watching. Waiting. Listening. Because the bone collector was never caught. Years have passed since the first bones were uncovered on that forgotten stretch of desert. But in Albuquerque, the pain still lingers. The dust still blows across the mesa, and beneath it, memories that won't stay buried. The site where the remains were found is now part of a housing development. Streets were paved. Houses were built. Families moved in, unaware of the tragedy beneath their feet. But for the families of the victims, time hasn't healed much. Every year, on the anniversary of the discovery, they gather, holding candles, sharing stories, saying names the world once ignored. A mural near downtown Albuquerque shows the faces of the 11 women, not as victims, but as lives worth remembering. Their mothers still speak out. Their children, now grown, ask why justice was never found. A few carry hope that one day, technology or guilt or a chance mistake will finally expose the one responsible. But hope competes with silence. The West Mesa Bone Collector case remains open, but frozen. The cold case unit still accepts tips. But years of dead ends have drained momentum. Leads fade. Witnesses forget. Evidence decays. And the sand keeps shifting. More unsettling is the idea that there may be other graves still out there, beyond the mesa, beyond the maps. The desert is vast. And whoever did this knew how to make women disappear without a trace. The case has become more than just a mystery, it's a symbol of something bigger. It's about how society treats the vulnerable. How some lives are labeled as disposable. How certain victims don't get the headlines, the urgency, or the justice they deserve. 11 women were buried, yes, but they were also ignored while they were alive. In recent years, advocates have pushed for better protections for women at risk, particularly sex workers and women of color. Some changes have been made. But the scars of West Mesa remain. Because this story isn't just about a serial killer. It's about a system that allowed one to thrive, undetected, for years. And perhaps that's the most terrifying truth. Not just that a killer walked free, but that for so long, no one was looking. The desert doesn't talk. It doesn't judge. It simply keeps its secrets, waiting for someone to listen. And if you stand still on the West Mesa, in the silence, you might feel it too, the weight of 11 lost lives, and the echo of one who got away. The wind still blows. But the questions remain.